Hey guys, tonight we drift into one of the strangest, lostest mysteries you carry around all day long, and probably never fully understand: your mind. Not your brain, exactly, though it sits up there humming like an expensive refrigerator. No, we're talking about the mind, that dreamy fog of thoughts, feelings, whispers, and worries that follows you through everything from awkward Zoom calls to crying in the shower while listening to 2000s pop ballads. And tonight, we're pulling it all apart gently, of course. With a whisper and a smirk: you're probably not going to survive this. At least not in the same state you entered. Because once you start realizing just how weird and misunderstood the mind really is, things begin to wobble. The line between you and not you blurs. And suddenly, brushing your teeth might feel like an existential crisis. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And hey, leave your location and local time in the comments. Let's see who's falling asleep where, and how many of you are secretly wide awake at 3:17 a.m. now. Dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. You lie still, a little heavier than before, a little slower in the breath, and in the silence behind your forehead, something stirs. Not quite a thought, not quite a feeling, just a sensation of being ... watched. Not by ghosts, don't worry. By yourself, because the first truth is this: your mind is not your brain, and it never was. They're often used interchangeably, like soda and pop, or trust me, and you're about to regret this. But the brain is a physical organ, a lumpy folded mass of meat that looks like a grey walnut soaked in tears. The mind, though it's not made of anything, it can't be held or sliced or scanned. It's the intangible collection of your thoughts, perceptions, emotions, and awareness. Think of your brain as a piano, and your mind, that's the music it plays. Beautiful, haunting, confusing music that sometimes forgets what key it's in. You can touch the piano, weigh it, smash it, please don't. But the melody, that's made of air and memory, ancient thinkers knew this too, in their own poetic way. Plato believed the mind existed in a realm beyond the physical, a kind of soul trapped in flesh. Meanwhile, in early Hindu texts, the manas was described not just as thought, but a filter, a gatekeeper between the outside world and your deeper self. Historians still argue whether the mind evolved with the brain or because of it. One theory says it emerged the way fire emerges from striking flint, a side effect of something physical, but utterly different in nature. And yet, we keep mixing them up, blaming a bad brain when we feel anxious, praising a good mind when someone solves a tricky puzzle. The truth, both are dancing together in every choice, every blink, every time you zone out while someone explains crypto. But here's the kicker. There are documented cases of people born with very little brain matter who somehow lived functional lives. One French civil servant had his skull scanned in 2007 and was found to be missing nearly 90% of his brain. And yet, he had a job, a family, and a mind that worked. Sort of. Mostly no one can fully explain it. Maybe plasticity steps in. Maybe the mind is more distributed than we think. Quirky fact: octopuses have neurons in their arms. Yes, their arms literally think for themselves. When an octopus reaches out, it may not be deciding so much as collaborating with its limbs. Imagine if your hand wrote this script while you napped. And now imagine your own mind in that way. Not as a captain steering the ship, but as an orchestra, sometimes in harmony, sometimes wildly offbeat, but always pulsing beneath the surface. You don't control your mind as much as you coexist with it, like roommates, and sometimes it leaves dishes in the sink. This is the beginning, the faintest outline, the piano lid lifted, the keys waiting. From here on, we press deeper not just into the folds of the brain, but into the shimmering, ungraspable fog that flickers behind your eyes every time you close them. And with your eyes closed, now probably, hopefully you begin to feel it. That sensation of being more than just flesh, more than thoughts, a slow, dreamy swirl of impressions, barely held together by sleepiness. The mind hums, the story flows. You float forward, carried on curiosity. You're not alone in there as your breath slows. Your mind does something strange, it splits. Quietly, gently, like a stream branching off into two rivers. One part of you stays grounded, listening to my voice, noticing the pressure of the blanket, thinking about how maybe you should have brushed your teeth a bit longer. But another part, it drifts. And here's the odd truth. That's normal. You might assume your mind is one solid, unified thing. One control panel. One you at the wheel. But most neuroscientists and philosophers, and even tired baristas would tell you the opposite. Your mind is a bundle of selves. Not one stream, but many tributaries flowing in parallel. Take the phenomenon of split-brain patients. Back in the mid-20th century, researchers experimented with people who had undergone a rare procedure severing the corpus callosum, the bridge between the brain's two hemispheres, to treat severe epilepsy. What happened next? Something out of a sci-fi short story. Each hemisphere started acting independently. One hand would button a shirt, the other would unbutton it. One side could draw a square, the other a circle. In verbal tests, one side could name a spoon, the other silent, confused, unsure. It was like watching a single person inhabited by two different minds coexisting, sharing space, but no longer sharing information. Historians still argue whether these patients actually had two minds, or whether the illusion just cracked open a deeper reality, that even in healthy brains, we are constantly juggling multiple mental voices. You know this feeling. You've argued with yourself before. I should go to bed early, or finish that whole season on Netflix. Two voices, two priorities, one brain, multiple minds. Freud wasn't entirely wrong with his whole ego, superego thing. It's dramatic, sure, a bit dated. But even now, modern psychology talks about inner parts, fragments of self, all cohabiting the same mental apartment, sharing snacks and blaming each other when something catches on fire. Quirky fact. Some researchers call this multiplex cognition. It's not the same as having multiple personalities. It's more like being a committee instead of a dictator. You have your emotional self, your logical self, your impulsive 3 a.m. snack goblin self. They all get a vote. Not all of them pay rent, and they're loudest when you're quiet. Have you ever noticed how your mind gets chatty when you're trying to sleep? That's no accident. As external distractions fade, your internal voices move to center stage, rehearsing old conversations, crafting imaginary arguments, or pondering whether giraffes ever get sore necks. Some scholars argue this inner narration, your default mode network, is the very root of consciousness. It's active when you're not doing anything specific, just thinking, musing, worrying, wondering. That hum in the background, that's your mind talking to itself, and sometimes lying. Because here's the uncomfortable truth. Your mind doesn't always tell the truth. Not to others, and certainly not to you. You've forgotten memories, misremembered details, told yourself stories that weren't real just to feel better. And yet, in the moment, they feel absolutely right. The mind is less a camera and more a novelist one, with an unreliable narrator and a flair for drama. Think of eyewitness testimony. Courts once trusted it blindly. Now, we know, memories warp. Witnesses misidentify. Your brain rewrites events constantly, like a lazy script editor who's already halfway out the door. You once swore your friend said that embarrassing thing at the party. Turns out it was you. Your mind just took creative license with the facts, and yet you trust it. You must. You live inside it. But what if you could meet the versions of yourself living just under the surface? The confident one, the nervous one, the funny one who only shows up in the shower. You've met them before. You just didn't realize they all wore your face. So next time you talk to yourself, know it's not weird, it's ancient, it's deeply human. Even animals do it in their own way. Birds rehearse songs. Internally, dogs dream of running. Elephants mourn with a silent mind that remembers pain. Your mind is a chorus, a family, sometimes a riot. And now, as your eyelids grow heavier, you begin to feel them fading, not disappearing, but dimming, letting one quiet voice take the lead. The sleepy one, the storyteller, the one who's walked with you through long nights and gentle storms. It whispers softly, "You're safe, you're still here," and the rest of your mind, it hums like a dimlit apartment after midnight, lights flickering in different rooms. Not empty, not alone, just resting. You forget more than you remember. You probably don't recall what you ate for lunch 2 Tuesdays ago, unless it was something dramatic like dropping spaghetti on your boss's shoes. Most of what happens to you, even the parts you think you'll remember forever, quietly dissolves into the soup of time. And yet, your mind insists it's got everything under control. Here's the awkward truth. Your memory is a sieve disguised as a vault. You may picture your memories as little files tucked away in labeled drawers, ready for access when needed. But neuroscience has news for you. Memory is not a filing cabinet. It's a messy artist. Every time you remember something, you don't retrieve it to repaint it, brushstroke by brushstroke. Historians still argue whether there is any such thing as a pure memory at all. Even your strongest recollections have probably been subtly altered, nudged by emotion, reshaped by hindsight, or completely hijacked by someone else's version of events. Take this fun tidbit. If a group of people watch the same car crash video, and one group is asked how fast the cars were going when they smashed, while another is asked how fast they were going when they bumped, the smashed group always estimates a higher speed. Some even remember seeing broken glass when there wasn't any. All because of one word. Yep, your brain is that impressionable. Like a teenager with a Pinterest board. Now picture this. You're walking down the street and you smell cinnamon rolls. Suddenly, you're 6 years old again, sitting in your grandmother's kitchen, feet swinging off the chair. That's not random. It's called associative memory, and it's one of the brain's most delicious quirks. Smells bypass the usual memory filters and punch you right in the nostalgia, that cozy childhood flashback. Probably inaccurate, but also probably real, because memory is emotional before it's factual. You remember feelings, not details. That's why your favorite childhood toy seems massive in your mind, but when you dig it out of the attic, it's the size of a potato. Quirky fringe fact. There are people, maybe 60 or so, documented in the world with hypothymesia, or highly superior autobiographical memory. They can tell you what day of the week June 12, 1998 fell on, what they wore, and what they ate for dinner. Sounds amazing, right? Except they can't forget anything. Even the embarrassing stuff. Even the trauma. It's not always a superpower. Sometimes it's a lifelong rerun you can't pause. Meanwhile, most of us forget 90% of what we experience. It's a feature, not a flaw. Your mind prunes memories to avoid overload. Otherwise, your brain would be like a hoarder's garage, filled with every license plate you've ever seen and every time someone waved at you. Some scholars argue this is why sleep is crucial not just for physical rest, but for memory consolidation. When you sleep, your brain runs a kind of highlight reel, deciding which events to keep and which to toss. The mundane gets deleted. The emotionally intense sticks around. That's why heartbreak and horror live rent-free in your mental attic. Well, you can't remember where you put your keys. Speaking of keys, you've experienced that weird mind glitch where you walk into a room and completely forget why you're there. That's called the doorway effect, and it's real. Just crossing a physical threshold can reset your working memory. Your brain assumes the context has changed, so it clears the mental cache like a digital browser trying to keep up. And you thought forgetting your coffee in the microwave was just stress. But here's a soft truth. Your memory isn't there to make you accurate. It's there to help you survive. Evolution favored brains that could adapt reality, not perfectly recall it. If a memory makes you cautious around snakes, it doesn't matter if the snake was actually green or brown. What matters is that you learned. Your mind is practical, messy. Yes, but fiercely loyal to your survival. And maybe that's why we forgive it when it fails us. When we can't recall names, or birthdays, or where we parked. We laugh, we shrug, we say, getting old, huh? But really, it's your brain, doing its best to navigate a world of infinite inputs with finite storage. Sometimes, it even does weird tricks to help. Like confabulation, a fancy word for the brain making up believable stories to fill in memory gaps. You once believed you told your friend about your weekend. You didn't. You just imagined the conversation so vividly, your brain filed it under. Happened, but you trust it. You have to. Your identity, your story, your sense of you is made of memories. In a way, you are a collection of the things your brain decided to keep. And as you lie here, perhaps remembering the sound of someone's voice or the light of a long ago afternoon, know this. Even if the facts aren't exact, the feeling is real. And maybe that's all that ever mattered. You only use 10% of your brain. Let's go ahead and pop that balloon right now. You are not walking around with a massive underused lump of brain jelly just waiting to be unlocked like a Netflix premium upgrade. You use all of your brain every day. Even when you're binge-watching reality TV with one sock on and a spoonful of peanut butter halfway to your mouth, the 10% myth is one of the most durable lies in popular science. It's been repeated so many times by motivational speakers. In movies, on social media, it somehow feels true, but it's not. It never was. Historians still argue whether the myth started with a misquote of psychologist William James, who once suggested that we are making use of only a small part of our possible mental and physical resources. Notice he said resources, not brain volume. But then, early 20th century self-improvement writers latched onto it like a motivational trampoline, and the myth has been doing cartwheels ever since. Neuroscientists cringe every time it's mentioned, because modern brain imaging fMRI, PET scans, EEG shows that you use virtually every part of your brain, even while sleeping. There is no dark, cobwebbed wing of the mind sitting idle like a haunted mansion. Even the quietest corners, the cerebellum, the anterior cingulate cortex, are buzzing with subtle activity, running logistics in the background so your conscious mind can focus on, say, the philosophical depth of why toast always falls butter side down. Quirky fringe fact: Albert Einstein, often falsely cited as the proof behind the myth, never claimed humans only use 10% of their brains. In fact, when asked about the mystery of intelligence, he just said, "I have no special talents. I am only passionately curious," which is polite German for "stop asking me weird things." So where did this magical extra 90% go? That's the kicker: it doesn't exist. The brain is expensive real estate. It takes up about 2% of your body weight, but uses around 20% of your energy. Evolution doesn't waste resources. If you didn't need a part of your brain, you wouldn't have it. You'd be like a chicken nugget with a diploma. And don't be fooled by brain mapping diagrams that show only certain areas lighting up during specific tasks. That doesn't mean the rest is inactive. It just means those regions are working harder at that moment. It's like a stadium. Just because only one section is cheering doesn't mean the rest of the fans are unconscious. Here's the spooky bit. Even when you're doing nothing, just lying on your back, staring at the ceiling fan, wondering if clouds ever take naps, your brain is still busy. This background mode is called the default mode network, or DMN, and it's your brain's go-to setting for daydreaming, memory consolidation, and self-reflection. It's also the reason your best ideas often come when you're not even trying, like in the shower, or halfway through brushing your cat. That's not nothing. That's brain gold. And it's happening in way more than 10% of your head now. Some scientists have floated theories that we might optimize our brain function more, or train ourselves to do things like lucid dream, or speed read, or stay focused in a noisy coffee shop. But that's a matter of improving efficiency, not unlocking mysterious hidden zones. You're not about to gain telepathy or levitation just because you solved a Sudoku without help, but people love the idea of secret potential. It's comforting to think we're one hack away from genius. The 10% myth feeds that fantasy. It's the human version of you only use 5% of your phone's features. Yeah, probably true. But your phone isn't wired into your bloodstream. Interestingly, some scholars argue this myth persists because it serves a psychological function. It offers hope, a way to believe that failure or mediocrity isn't fixed. That maybe, with the right audiobook or brain training app, you can suddenly become fluent in Japanese, build IKEA furniture without cursing, and finally understand cryptocurrency. Unfortunately, no app will give you a second brain. You've got one, and it's all you've ever needed. And hey, it's doing an incredible job. Right now, without effort, your brain is regulating your temperature, monitoring your breathing, analyzing the words on this screen, storing some in short-term memory, and filtering out the faint sound of your neighbor's dog barking at a leaf. You're not only using 10%, you're just using it so well that you don't even notice. And here's a fun twist. Damage to even a tiny region of the brain can have major consequences. A stroke the size of a grape can erase your ability to speak or recognize faces. That should tell you just how important every percent of that gray matter really is. The idea of 90% going unused. It's about as accurate as believing your car engine only uses one piston at a time. So, next time you hear someone drop the 10% line, Gently offer them a cup of tea and a new fun fact, like how octopuses have brains in their arms, or how the brain can generate enough electricity to power a light bulb. But please, let that tired old myth take a nap. You're already using more of your brain than you give yourself credit for, even now, even when you forget where you left your phone while you're holding it. Goldfish memory and your brain's reputation, you know the joke. The goldfish, that ever-swimming orange puffball of forgetfulness, floating in its little bowl with a memory span so short it forgets where it is every 3 seconds. Sound familiar? You've probably heard someone say, "I have the memory of a goldfish," usually after walking into a room and immediately forgetting why. But here's the thing. That's not only unfair to goldfish, it's also flat out wrong. Goldfish do not have 3-second memories. In fact, studies have shown they can remember things for months. They can be trained to associate sounds with food, to recognize faces, even to navigate mazes. That's right, your average pet store goldfish could probably solve a basic escape room if it were submerged and had snack-based incentives. Researchers at the Israeli Technion Institute even trained goldfish to push a lever for food, and the fish would remember the timing of feedings weeks later. So next time someone mocks your forgetfulness, just remind them that the goldfish is innocent, and you're the one who forgot your Netflix password again. Historians still argue whether the 3-second memory idea began as a throwaway joke, or as a misinterpretation of early animal studies. But one thing is certain, this myth stuck because it makes us feel better about our own forgetfulness. If a goldfish can't remember, then maybe we're not so bad, right? Except we are a little bad. At least sometimes. Your brain is a memory machine, but it's also a ruthless filter. It doesn't want to remember everything, just the important stuff. If it stored every second of your day, your mind would be a hoarder's attic full of awkward handshakes, breakfast choices, and 32 versions of "Did I lock the door?" Quirky tidbit: the reason you can't remember being born isn't because your brain was too small, it's because the hippocampus, the region responsible for long-term memory formation, wasn't developed enough yet. That's right, your own brain ghosted you on the most important day of your life. Still, short-term memory isn't a weakness, it's an evolutionary tool. Your brain takes in an overwhelming amount of data every second. Sights, sounds, textures, smells, tastes, half-formed thoughts, internal debates about whether cereal is soup. If your brain didn't flush some of that out instantly, you'd collapse under the cognitive weight of remembering every rustle of paper or blinking cursor. But you do remember. Things, just not always on command. That feeling of walking into a room and blanking. That's called the doorway effect, a phenomenon where passing through a physical threshold causes your brain to refresh the context of what it was doing. Like switching browser tabs. It's not memory failure. Your brain trying to optimize attention. So yes, your brain is basically Google Chrome. Fast, powerful, and sometimes mysteriously sluggish with too many tabs open. Yet, the human mind can form powerful long-term memories when emotionally charged or frequently repeated. That's why you remember where you were on a big day like a graduation or an embarrassing karaoke night, but not the name of your dentist's receptionist. Sorry, Brenda. Memory is also deeply tied to smell. Ever gotten a whiff of sunscreen and been mentally catapulted back to a 4th grade field trip at the pool? That's your olfactory bulb, the brain's direct hotline to the limbic system, punching you with nostalgia. It bypasses all logic and jumps straight to feeling, which is kind of magical and a little sneaky, but even long-term memory is malleable. You think you remember something clearly, but every time you recall it, you alter it. Slightly. Like whispering a story to yourself across the years. That's called reconsolidation, and it's why eyewitness testimony is often unreliable. The more you remember, the more your brain starts remixing the tape. There's also something called the misinformation effect, where your brain can overwrite actual memories with suggested ones. For example, if someone asks you, "Did you see the broken headlight?" when the car accident didn't involve any, your memory might conveniently add one in, like a helpful but wildly inaccurate intern. Still, none of that means your memory is broken. It just means it's human flawed, flexible, shaped by feelings. The brain remembers what matters to your emotional core, not your calendar app. That's why the face of your high school crush is crystal clear, but the names of your co-workers, Steve, Sharon, probably. Let's not forget, memory isn't a filing cabinet. It's a reconstruction project. Your brain doesn't pull memories out like library books. It rebuilds them every time, and sometimes it uses spare parts. Now, back to the goldfish. Turns out, not only are they capable of solid memory retention, but they also have surprisingly complex brains for their size. They've been used in studies on attention, learning, and even depression. So next time you see one swimming in circles, don't assume it's forgotten everything. It's probably just chilling. Or judging you. In fact, some argue that our tendency to project forgetfulness onto goldfish says more about us than them. We crave scapegoats for our cognitive hiccups. It's easier to say, "Ugh, I'm such a goldfish," than to admit our brain is simply prioritizing, adapting, or, yes, momentarily overwhelmed because we skipped lunch and tried to answer 12 texts at once. So, the next time you blank on someone's name or forget your own phone number while saying it aloud, don't worry, you're not broken. You're not slipping. You're just a complex, breathing, thinking being whose brain is doing triage in the background. And somewhere, in a tank near someone's kitchen window, a goldfish is watching you and remembering the last time you fed it late. Multitasking myths and mental juggling, you halfway through texting a friend, microwaving leftovers, listening to a podcast, and scrolling your For You page. All at once, you think, "I'm multitasking like a pro." But what your brain is actually doing, struggling not to trip over itself while trying to do 4 cartwheels in a wind tunnel. Multitasking, as we imagine it doing several things well at the same time, is mostly a myth. Not because you're not brilliant, you are, but because your brain isn't wired for true parallel processing like a computer. It's built for focus, switching, and very fast task juggling. The key word being switching, not simultaneity. Neurologically, your prefrontal cortex, the part responsible for executive function and attention, can handle one cognitively demanding task at a time. When you multitask, your brain doesn't combine efforts. It just toggles rapidly between them, burning fuel and attention like a smartphone with every app open. That's why talking on the phone while driving doubles your risk of an accident. You're not doing both. You're switching between driving and imagining talking, which is why Siri probably doesn't want your job. Now, historians still argue whether ancient humans were more focused because of simpler lives or whether they multitasked in their own way, balancing fire tending, story sharing, and baby holding all at once. But one thing's certain, they didn't have TikTok notifications pinging their spears mid-hunt. In the 21st century, We reward the illusion of busyness. Productivity porn, time hacks, bullet journals, rise and grind, Mugsit, all feeds into this belief that if you're not doing 5 things at once, you're somehow falling behind. But cognitive science says the opposite. Multitasking often leads to shallower work, more errors, and ironically, slower progress. One fringe but fascinating tidbit: there's a phenomenon known as attention residue. When you switch from task A to task B, a bit of your brain stays behind with a ghost tab in your mental browser. So when you hop to B, you're not fully there. Part of you is still wondering how that email thread ended, or whether you remembered to unmute yourself during the Zoom meeting when you sneezed. Even your brain's default mode, network the part that lights up when you're daydreaming or resting, gets interrupted when you try to do too many things at once. And that part of the brain, it's crucial for creativity, memory consolidation, and that weird moment in the shower when you suddenly solve your biggest problem of the week. Yes, showers are where breakthroughs go to hide. But let's be honest, some multitasking feels good. Folding laundry while watching a show, listening to audiobooks while walking, or cooking dinner while ranting on the phone. All of those can feel productive because they are in the right combinations. That's called background tasking. And your brain's usually okay with one activity being mostly autopilot. It's the cognitively heavy stuff, writing, reading, coding, problem solving, that suffers under the weight of multitasking. Trying to analyze spreadsheets while fielding Slack messages. That's like trying to write a poem during a dodgeball match. Technically possible, sure, but only if you enjoy metaphorical bruises. A study from Stanford even found that frequent multitaskers perform worse at filtering irrelevant information, organizing their thoughts, and switching tasks effectively. Their brains get trained for chaos, not clarity. In other words, if your brain is always juggling, it eventually forgets how to just hold something. Here's another weird twist. Multitasking feels productive because each switch releases a tiny dose of dopamine. Like slot machines, you feel busy, stimulated, alive, but you're also draining your cognitive battery faster than necessary. It's the mental version of running a marathon by doing jumping jacks in every direction, and yet we keep doing it. Maybe because stillness feels unproductive, or because silence is rare, or maybe because we're addicted to novelty, and switching gives us that hit of new. Either way, the brain pays the toll. Want to mess with your mind in a fun way? Try the Stroop test. It's where you read color words printed in the wrong color ink, like the word blue printed in red, and try to say the color, not the word. Your brain stumbles because it's trying to process conflicting signals at once. A reminder that even simple mental multitasking short-circuits your neurons just a little. And then there's the bilingual effect. People who regularly switch between languages tend to be better at tasks switching overall. Their brains are used to toggling codes. So technically, learning a new language might help you multitask better, but only after years of hard practice and mental gymnastics. There's something refreshing about single tasking, though. When you focus on one thing with full attention, your brain can drop into something called flow state. That's when time melts, distractions vanish, and your performance reaches its peak. Athletes, artists, and even surgeons chase this state, and it's almost impossible to enter while juggling for things and checking your phone every 43 seconds. So, what's the takeaway here? Besides the fact that your brain is doing its best despite your 27 open tabs, it's this: your mind isn't failing you. It's just not designed to juggle flaming swords, while also composing a haiku and remembering your Amazon password. Multitasking isn't a skill, it's a compromise. And maybe, just maybe, your brain deserves a little more patience and a little less pinging. The brain that lies to you daily. You'd like to believe your brain is a loyal little butler, always delivering truth and logic on a silver platter. But tonight, let's gently ruin that fantasy. Because your brain, yes, yours is a master of self-deception. It fills gaps, makes up stories, edits memories like a sloppy film intern, and occasionally just straight up lies to keep you from having a mental breakdown in the grocery aisle. One of the brain's favorite tricks, confabulation. It sounds elegant, like a Victorian tea dance, but really it's when your brain fabricates memories without even realizing it. You ask someone why they did something, and they give you a perfectly reasonable answer. Except it's not the real reason. Their brain just filled in the blanks with something plausible. The wild part. This happens to you too. Probably every day. You just don't notice because your inner narrator always sounds confident even when it's winging it, neurologically speaking. Memory isn't a perfect recording. It's more like a game of telephone played in a foggy cave with bad lighting. Each time you recall something, your brain recreates it, influenced by your current mood, biases, and context. And each recreation slightly overwrites the original. So, that childhood memory you cherish, there's a chance it's been gently rewritten. Over the years, like a palimpsest manuscript, historians still argue whether certain traumatic memories are more immune to this rewriting, or more susceptible. The brain might protect you by editing painful scenes, or it might burn them in extra deep. Either way, truth becomes a slippery little eel swimming through the gelatin of your neurons. Then there's the Mandela effect, a delightful slice of collective misremembering where millions of people swear something happened a certain way, but it didn't. You remember the Monopoly man having a monocle. He doesn't. Or Pikachu having a black tail tip. Nope. These aren't just quirky trivia errors. They reveal how brains copy from each other, reinforcing errors through social memory. It's memory by committee, and the committee has poor eyesight. A fringe but curious theory even suggests that memories are stored not just in individual neurons, but across complex patterns of neural networks, meaning your brain might be able to fill in pieces of a broken memory using educated guesses. Basically, your brain is like that friend who claims to have read the book but really just skimmed the Wikipedia summary. You also experience visual filling in every second of your life. You have a literal blind spot in your retina, but your brain fills in the hole with surrounding information so you don't notice. It's like having a jigsaw puzzle with a missing piece and convincing yourself it's complete because your brain colored it in with Sharpie. That little visual lie, it's happening right now, even more dramatic. Your brain doesn't process everything you see or hear. It filters based on what it thinks is important. That's why you miss obvious details in change blindness experiments. When a person's shirt color switches mid-conversation and you don't even blink, your brain goes, she, not relevant, and moves on. Kind of like how you conveniently forget where your socks are 5 seconds after opening the drawer. And then there's cognitive dissonance, that awkward mental tension when your actions contradict your beliefs. Your brain hates this, so it rewrites the script. You didn't buy the overpriced juicer because of TikTok. You did it because you're serious about wellness now. Sure, one mainstream example. People who predict their favorite team will win, then say, I knew we'd lose the moment they don't. Their belief and outcome don't match, so the brain retrofits the memory. Poof, new narrative. All of this makes you wonder, what's the real you? Is it the one who experienced the moment, or the one who remembered it later? Neuroscience doesn't offer easy answers. Some say the self is a bundle of stories your brain stitches together in real time. Others argue it's more of a process than a thing, like a flame flickering across neurons, always moving. Even split-brain experiments reveal the depth of this illusion. When scientists sever the corpus callosum, the bridge between the brain's hemispheres, each half starts operating semi-independently. If one side sees something and the other doesn't, people might still make up a reason for their behavior without knowing the real cause. It's like having two narrators in one skull, each convinced they're in charge, and still you function. You wake up, sip your coffee, make decisions, form opinions, laugh at memes, cry during montages as if you're a coherent, singular entity. Your brain helps you believe that. Maybe because survival is easier when you trust your own story. There's comfort in this trickery. Imagine if your brain didn't smooth things out, if every glitch, doubt, or contradiction was left raw and exposed. You'd barely get out of bed. The lies aren't evil. They're cozy. They tuck you in at night and whisper, "You're fine. You've got this." Still, once you realize your brain is a bit of a fiction writer, you begin to question what else. It's spun into truth. That argument you won. That time you were definitely the victim. That joke you swore you came up with first. Maybe yes. Maybe your brain just gave you the better edit. So next time you say, "I know what I saw," or "I remember it perfectly," maybe pause, smile, and acknowledge the tiny playwright inside your head who might be adding a little flair. Why your mind loves patterns even when they're fake. So here you are, lying under your blankets with your eyes half closed and your brain pretending it's winding down. But really, it's scanning, always scanning, looking for a pattern. That's what your mind does. It's not just curious, it's obsessed. You glance at clouds and spot dragons, toast and see the Virgin Mary, or listen to a fan humming and swear you hear words. Welcome to the wonderfully twitchy world of pareidolia. Your mind can't help it. It's been hardwired for this since your ancestors were out dodging saber-toothed cats. Spotting a predator's face in the bush shriel or not was worth the false alarm. Better safe than saber-toothed. That evolutionary quirk never left. Now, it just makes you scream when you think you see a person in the dark, only to realize it's a coat on a chair. Classic. Mainstream science confirms this. Humans are natural-born pattern seekers. From constellations to crop circles, from lucky socks to conspiracy theories, when your brain sees random chaos, it panics. It needs order, so it imposes one. Like gluing googly eyes to the universe and saying, "Ah, that makes more sense." You do it with sounds, too. Ever played a song backward and thought you heard satanic whispers? That's your brain doing what it always does, finding meaning where none was planted. There's even a term for this in audio: backmasking apophonia. It's fun to say, weird to experience, and almost always totally invented by your pattern-loving neurons. Historians still argue whether ancient civilizations actually believed their complex astrological systems worked, or if it was more symbolic. But you can bet they found patterns in the stars and wove them into mythologies, calendars, and destinies. It wasn't delusion, it was logic, dressed up in the best robes they had. This tendency is why gamblers swear by hot streaks and stock. Traders see trends in jagged graphs. It's why your friend thinks Mercury in retrograde messed up her Tinder date. The pattern-finding machine up there is constantly looking for cause and effect, even when it's just chaos doing its thing. And once a pattern feels real, it becomes a belief. Not because it's true, but because it fits. Even superstitions live in this cozy corner. Walk under a ladder, and you might not get hurt, but your brain will brace, because somewhere along the line, a pattern was formed. Ladders equals bad luck. It's stuck. And now, even when you know it's nonsense, the feeling lingers like the smell of burnt popcorn. And let's not forget, Rorschach tests, those ink blots the therapists used to love, waving around like psychological tarot cards. You stare at a blob, and your brain desperately says, it's a bat. Or maybe my ex. That test wasn't just for drama. It revealed how wildly different people can interpret the same shapeless mess. Because when you're uncertain, your brain fills in the blanks with your fears, memories, and half-buried anxieties. One quirky tidbit. Humans are so pattern-hungry that in experiments, even pigeons have been trained to recognize Picasso versus Monet. No joke. Some birds consistently chose the right artist. Is that intelligence, or just a glorified guess? Scientists aren't sure, but the fact that birds can pattern match with art is a strange little wrinkle in our understanding of cognition. And what about dreams? Oh, the chaotic mind movies where your teeth fall out while your third-grade teacher turns into a flamingo. Nonsense, right? And yet, you wake up trying to make sense of them. Your brain doesn't say, well, that was weird. It says, this must mean something. And there it is again. Pattern recognition. Sneakily dressing up your REM sleep like it's an encrypted message from the cosmos. Why does your brain do this? Part of it is comfort. Patterns mean predictability. And predictability means safety. If A leads to B and B leads to C, then maybe D won't kill you. It's survival math with emotional cushioning. But the dark side. Sometimes you spot patterns that aren't there and make choices based on fiction. You fear the wrong things. Trust the wrong hunches. Or worst of all, buy expensive crystals on the internet. Historians still argue whether ancient divination systems were sincere attempts at insight or simply socially useful rituals. But even now, modern humans do the same thing. We check horoscopes, wear lucky colors, or refuse to watch the final inning of a game because we were in the kitchen last time they scored. You laugh about it, but don't not do it. There's even research into how people prone to magical thinking might have stronger default mode network activity in the brain, the part that generates imagination and connections. Basically, the more your brain tries to link things, the more likely you are to find meaning in the random. And that's not all bad. It's part of creativity, intuition, even spirituality. But sometimes it also convinces you your dog is reincarnated from your grandma. And who's to say she isn't? That's the fun part. Your mind in its sleepy brilliance will always find pictures in the noise. It will always try to turn radio static into whispers, paint splashes into dragons, coincidences into fate. It can't help itself, and honestly, it's kind of beautiful. You walk through a universe of uncertainty and, without even trying, your mind turns it into a story worth believing. Maybe don't let that story dictate your lottery numbers. The truth about memory. You're editing it right now. So, you think you remember your 10th birthday. The smell of frosting, the too-tight clown costume your uncle thought was hilarious. The absolute chaos when the dog jumped on the table. You're sure of it, every detail as crisp as yesterday's breakfast. But here's the kicker. Your memory is lying to you, boldly, with flair, and you're just rolling with it. Memory isn't a video recorder. It's more like a Google Doc with unlimited collaborators. Guess what? You're the least reliable editor in the room. Every time you recall something, you don't just retrieve it, to rewrite it. New emotions, new context, a little flair added for drama. And then you save that updated version as if it's the original. Sorry, your brain is basically your own life. Mainstream psychology calls this the reconstructive model of memory. It's not just about storing information, it's about rebuilding it every single time. So that argument with your cousin last year, you've played it back 10 times, each time a little more in your favor. Turns out, you might not be the innocent angel you remember. Historians still argue whether ancient oral histories reflect fact or just generation after generation of well-meaning memory edits. After all, when societies relied on storytellers, every retelling came with new emphasis, different details, and, inevitably, a bit of spice. Like the world's longest-running game of telephone, except now we call it mythology. One quirky tidbit. There's something called the Mandela effect, where groups of people remember the same wrong thing, like thinking the Monopoly guy has a monocle he doesn't, or that Pikachu had a black-tipped tail he doesn't. Entire communities swear these things were true. Are we all glitching in the Matrix, or just experiencing collective memory blunders with full confidence and matching t-shirts? Even your earliest memories are probably fake. Studies show that people can remember events from age 2 or younger, yet your brain isn't even fully equipped to make lasting memories until around age 3. That moment you remember from your hike, it's probably a photo you saw once or a story your parents told you over dinner. And don't even get started on eyewitness testimony. Courts love it. Juries eat it up. But research shows that it's wildly unreliable. Ask 10 people to describe the same event, and you'll get 10 different recollections, each of them certain, confident, and possibly wearing completely different hats. Your brain doesn't prioritize truth. It prioritizes coherence, whatever makes the story work. Ever hear of flashbulb memories? They're those vivid, snapshot-like memories tied to major events, like where you were during a tragedy or a historic moment. People swear by them, clutching the details like sacred relics. But even those change over time. What you remember feeling or doing during a major event becomes warped by news coverage, other people's stories, and the simple need to make it make sense. Here's a fun experiment scientists did. They showed participants a fake video of a real event, a plane crash or a riot, and later asked questions. Many participants remembered details from the fake video that were never shown. Their minds filled in the blanks, and poof, brand new memories were born, polished, and filed away with the rest. You even edit memories to protect yourself emotionally. Like that time you bombed a presentation in high school. Maybe, over time, your brain softens the humiliation, rewrites reactions, makes you the brave underdog instead of the sweaty disaster you actually were. It's a defense mechanism with flair. Call it emotional Photoshop. But sometimes, memory gets spooky. There are cases of people remembering entire lives that feel real lives. They're sure they've lived before. Are they time travelers, victims of reincarnation, or just imaginative folks whose brains stitch together a quilt from movies, books, and dreams? Scholars still debate whether these memories reflect genuine metaphysical truths, or just a particularly dramatic Tuesday night. And speaking of dreams, did you know you can form memories in your sleep that feel just as vivid as waking ones? You might remember a conversation you never had, or a place you've never been but try. Convincing your brain of that, good luck. Your dream self is sneakily contributing to the memory vault without your permission. Ever misplace your keys and spend 20 minutes retracing your steps, only to realize the memory of putting them on the counter was a memory of intending to put them there? That's a classic mind trick. Your brain treats plans like actions if the intention was strong enough. It's why you swear you sent that email that never got written. And don't feel bad, this memory fuzziness isn't just you. Nobel laureates, chess grandmasters, and even presidents have confidently recalled events that were later proven impossible. Your brain doesn't check receipts. It's too busy constructing your identity out of whatever building blocks it can find, duct tape included. Your mind doesn't want accuracy, it wants narrative. It wants you to be the protagonist, the survivor, the one who made it through. It takes fear and joy and panic and shame and glues them together with stories. If the story shifts a little over time, no problem. That's just editing. So, as you drift off tonight, take comfort in knowing that even your worst memories are probably half fake. Maybe that embarrassing fall wasn't in front of everyone. Maybe that one breakup line wasn't as brutal as you remember. Or maybe, just maybe, your mind has already softened the edges, sanding the sharp bits into something gentler. And if not, give it a few more nights. Your brain loves a rewrite. The mind on autopilot. You're not actually in control. You're walking down the street, latte in hand, earbuds in, vaguely wondering if that weird pimple on your chin is announcing itself to the world. Suddenly demure at your destination. No memory of how you got there. No recollection of dodging that biker or crossing two intersections. You just arrived. Congratulations. Your brain was driving and you weren't even in the passenger seat. What just happened? Welcome to autopilot mode, also known as default mode network in neuroscience circles. When your brain gets bored of the mundane or the overly familiar, it hits the cruise control button and lets your subconscious take the wheel. It's like hiring a ghost version of yourself to handle the basics while the real you drifts off into some half dream about pizza bagels or last night's text message. Here's a mainstream psychological fact. Roughly 40% of your day is spent in this hazy fog of habitual behavior. Making tea, typing your password, that sigh you always do before a Zoom call. Your conscious mind checks out, and your subconscious blessed just hums along. It's basically a part-time babysitter for your actual self. And the spooky part, your brain doesn't always tell you it's on autopilot. You're not alerted with a dashboard light or a cheerful chime. You just go blank, then pop back in like nothing happened. Makes you wonder how many conversations you've had without really being there. If you've ever laughed at a joke you didn't hear just to keep the conversation rolling. You know the feeling. Historians still argue whether our ancestors operated in this default mode more than we do, or if modern life with its infinite scrolls and grocery store lighting just feels more automatic. Did medieval peasants daydream while threshing wheat? Did scribes space out during manuscript copying, accidentally writing dragon instead of dragon fruit? Wait, never mind. Dragon fruit wasn't even invented yet. You get the point. There's a quirky psychological experiment where people were asked to sit alone in a room with nothing to do for 15 minutes, or press a button that delivered a small electric shock. most chose the shock. Why? Because their minds, unsupervised, became unbearable. That's how much we rely on mental background noise to shield us from our own wandering thoughts. You think you're in control, but even your choices can be manipulated by what's called priming. See a red car just before picking a fruit. You're more likely to choose an apple than a banana. Read words like slow and grey, and you might literally walk slower. That's not magic hits. Your subconscious grabbing the wheel, swerving you toward decisions that feel independent but aren't, even moral decisions. What you think is good or bad can depend on what your mind is chewing on that day. Studies have shown that judges give harsher sentences right before lunch. Apparently, justice gets cranky when it's hungry. Your moral compass isn't a compass, it's a smartphone on 3% battery and a cracked screen. Have you ever had a moment where you suddenly realize you're doing something completely unplanned, like picking up your phone mid-task or opening the fridge without knowing why? That's your habit loop at work. Trigger, routine, reward. Your brain says, hey, usually around now we scroll Instagram, and your thumb just obeys. Here's the kicker. Your brain loves autopilot. It's efficient. It saves energy. But it also means a huge chunk of your life is happening without you in it. While you're daydreaming about alpaca farms or reciting the ingredients of peanut butter in your head, your body is checking items off your to-do list. It's comforting and just a little terrifying. There's a famous case of a man who drove all the way home from work, only to realize he meant to stop at the grocery store. Classic autopilot. His brain had filed the drive home. Routine under muscle memory, and overrode his intention like an overconfident intern clicking submit to early. Even language runs on this hidden treadmill. Ever end a phone call with love you to someone you did not mean to say that to? That's your speech autopilot blurting out its go-to script. It's the same reason you thank the ATM. You're not polite. You're on autopilot. But here's the fringe bit. Some neuroscientists now believe that what we call consciousness might just be the smallest, flimsiest part of the brain's operation, a sort of PR team that takes credit for decisions made elsewhere. You didn't choose the ice cream. Your brain did. You're just here to justify it after the fact. Open debate continues on whether free will is an illusion or just a very polite suggestion. Some argue that everything from your sandwich choice to your soulmate might be the result of biochemical nudges and environmental cues layered together like an onion made of weird little habits. Others insist there's still room for agency, even if it's just choosing how to react to your pre-baked instincts. Meanwhile, your brain quietly keeps the lights on, monitoring your breathing, balancing your limbs, making sure you blink often. Enough not to creep people out, all without you lifting a single metaphorical finger. You're outsourcing your own existence, so tonight, as you feel yourself slipping into sleep, notice how your breathing starts to slow on its own. That's not you doing it. That's the machine humming under the hood, the background operator, saying, "Don't worry, I've got this." Let yourself ride the rhythms it creates. Let your autopilot tuck you in. And if you dream about driving a bus full of penguins while singing country music, well, your mind's got a sense of humor. 2. Dreamworld mechanics. The mind's nightly theater, floating now. Not literally, unless you're one of those lucid dreamers who's mastered the art of dream flight, but you know the feeling. One moment you're lying in bed, blanket just barely twisted under your knees, and the next you're galloping through a supermarket on a llama wearing sunglasses. You're not shocked. You're not even curious, because when it comes to dreams, your mind just shrugs and says, Sure, why not? Welcome to the nightly improv show inside your skull. Every night, your mind dips in and out of multiple sleep stages, like a DJ mixing tracks at an all-neural rave. The headliner, of course, is REM's sleep-rapid eye movement. That's the one where your brain lights up like Times Square. Your muscles go limp, a safety feature, trust me, and your dreams crank up the weirdness to 11. Here's the mainstream fact. The average person dreams about 2 hours every night, whether they remember it or not. That means by the time you're 80, you'll have spent nearly 6 years dreaming. 6 full years of nonsensical plot lines, surprise cameos by your old math teacher, and recurring nightmares about being naked at work. Fun. One fringe tidbit. Some researchers believe dreams aren't just random nonsense. They're emotion rehearsals. Like a free overnight therapy session where your subconscious lets you process rejection, anxiety, or that time someone said no offense before deeply offending you. It's your brain saying, let's play this again, but this time, you stand up for yourself. Now, historians still argue whether ancient civilizations viewed dreams as prophecy or nonsense. The Egyptians leaned hard into a divine messages dream, books and all. The Greeks had their own dream temples where people would sleep to receive healing visions. And today, we have Reddit threads titled, "Was this dream weird? Or am I just broken?" Your dreaming brain is both the director and the audience. It's editing, scripting, scoring, and performing all in real time. And somehow, despite zero logic or continuity, you almost always accept the bizarre as totally normal. You don't bat an eye when your dog speaks French or your dentist is also your high school crush. The dreaming brain doesn't care about plot holes. It runs on vibes. But dreams aren't just surrealist art exhibitions. They're crucial for memory consolidation. Think of your brain like a sleepy librarian sorting the books of your day. Keep this, toss that, bury this embarrassing thing deep in the basement. Dreaming helps file your experiences into the long-term archive, or at least shoves them into labeled chaos, like your sock drawer. There's even a theory that dreams help you solve problems. Ever woken up with a weird sense of clarity, like suddenly you know exactly what to text your ex or how to finally fix the bathroom leak? That's your mind working overtime while you snooze. Paul McCartney famously dreamed the melody of Yesterday. The chemist Kekule reportedly dreamed the structure of the benzene ring as a snake biting its own tail. You'd probably dreamed you were late for an exam you didn't study for, even though you graduated years ago. Of course, there's also lucid dreaming, the inceptional level experience where you realize mid-dream that you're dreaming and decide to take the wheel. Not everyone can do it, but those who can often describe it as exhilarating, empowering, or mildly terrifying depending on what's behind that dream door you just opened. And don't forget the recurring dreams, the ones that play on loop like a broken record. You're falling, you're running but not moving. You're showing up to school with no pants and a pop quiz on Icelandic grammar. These tend to reflect unresolved tension or psychological patterns you haven't quite untangled yet. It's your brain's way of gently nagging you with metaphorical post-it notes in the form of fever dream cinema. Interestingly, not all dreams are colorful. People who go blind early in life often dream in other senses: sound, touch, even smell. And some dreams are completely silent, like black and white films with the subtitles turned off. The format shifts depending on your experience. Your brain, it turns out, customizes your dreamscape. Nightmares, of course, are the spicy side of dreams. They spike your cortisol, raise your heart rate, and sometimes jolt you awake mid-scream. Evolutionary psychologists suspect these terror reels may have helped our ancestors rehearse danger, like saber-toothed tigers or angry tribal elders, without actually dying in the process. But then there are the dreams that don't make sense even to Freud. The ones when nothing scary or meaningful happens, just you ironing a fish while someone softly sings elevator music in the background. They linger like fog. You wake up thinking, wait, what just happened? But it slips through your fingers before you can grab it. A popular modern theory called activation synthesis suggests that dreams are simply the brain trying to make sense of random electrical signals during REM. It's like receiving 1,000 jigsaw puzzle pieces from different boxes and trying to form a single coherent picture. Spoiler, it usually ends up abstract, and sometimes you dream of people you haven't thought of in years. Old friends, exes, childhood bullies. They're not summoned. By logic, they're floated in from the archives like dusty cameos. Your subconscious has a far longer memory than you do, and it's not afraid to use it in the weirdest possible ways. So tonight, when your eyes flutter shut and you begin your descent into slumber, try not to grip the reins too tightly. Let the curtain rise. Let the audience hush. Your nightly theater is about to begin. Whether it's a comedy, a horror flick, or a slow-moving documentary about socks, trust that your mind knows the script. If you don't, split brains and phantom limbs, you sit quietly, staring at your hand. It's there. You wiggle your fingers. Solid, warm, yours. But then imagine this. You lose that hand. And somehow it still itches, still clenches, still reaches for a cup that no longer exists. It sounds like a spooky ghost story told by nerves, but it's real. It's called a phantom limb, and it's one of the most hauntingly fascinating windows into how your mind defines you. The brain isn't just a container, it's a map maker. Inside your head lives a warped little homunculus, a tiny, grotesque body map where your lips and hands are huge, your torso is puny, and your feet seem like an afterthought. That's how much brain power is dedicated to each body part. And when that part is lost, well, the map doesn't get the memo right away. Sometimes it never does. That's where the itch comes from, or the pain. Your brain is sending signals to a limb that no longer exists, like a radio DJ playing a request for a listener who's already left the station. Scientists still debate whether these sensations come from nerve endings at the amputation site, or from the brain itself clinging to the ghost of what once was. But phantom limbs are just the opening act. Now, slide deeper into the weird world of split-brain patients. People who, usually due to severe epilepsy, have had the corpus callosum cut. That's the thick cable of neural tissue connecting the brains to hemispheres. Once it's severed, oh boy, that's when things get ... confusing. Picture this: a patient stares straight ahead. The left hemisphere, which handles language, sees a picture of a snow scene. The right hemisphere sees a chicken foot. When asked to point to something related, the right hand, controlled by the left brain, picks a chicken. The left hand, controlled by the right brain, points to a snow shovel. The patient then tries to explain why they picked both. Well, they say, the chicken goes with the foot, and you need a shovel to clean the chicken coop. Clever. Cover up. But the truth is, one half of their brain had no idea what the other half saw. It's like two co-workers trapped in the same office, pretending they're not having separate meetings. So here's your mainstream fact. The brain's left and right hemispheres are specialized. Language tends to live on the left, spatial awareness on the right, but this isn't as clean as pop psychology wants you to believe. There's no such thing as a purely left-brained or right-brained person. You're not a robot versus a poet. You're a whole circus in one head. The fringe. There are documented cases where the two hemispheres of a split-brain patient seem to disagree. One hand buttons a shirt, the other unbuttons it. One hand reaches for a book, the other slaps it away. It's not demonic possession, it's just conflicting commands from two parts of one divided mind. And neuroscientists still argue whether consciousness is unified or a collection of subpersonalities. Are you truly oneself, one you? Or are you a committee that just really likes pretending to be in agreement? Let's step sideways for a moment. There are cases of alien hand syndrome, where a person's hand acts with a will of its own. It grabs, it throws, it touches things the conscious mind never told it to. You're not dreaming. This has happened in real life. Often, it's related to damage in the corpus callosum or supplementary motor area. The hand, unmoored from central control, becomes a rogue actor. Now, remember that time you reached for your phone without thinking, or drove home without recalling the route. That's your autopilot brain at work. We all have subroutines and conscious programs doing their thing, while the you partakes a coffee break. But in these more extreme cases, the line between me and my brain starts to blur in unsettling ways. What makes this especially curious is how our sense of ownership over the body is so strong and yet so icily tricked. Ever done the rubber hand illusion? A fake hand is placed where your real hand should be, hidden out of sight. Both are stroked simultaneously. Within minutes, your brain adopts the fake hand. It feels like yours, until someone smashes it with a hammer and you flinch, because you think that pain belongs to you. You are, in a very real sense, the stories your brain tells itself. Stories about where your body begins and ends, what belongs to you, who you are. But those stories can be edited sometimes violently by trauma, injury, or even illusion. And if you want to get really eerie, consider this. Some people born without limbs still report phantom sensations. They never had a left arm, but they feel it, move it, even dream with it. How does that make sense? The brain had a template for the body before birth, like architectural blueprints waiting to be filled. And even when the structure is never built, the design remains. The mind doesn't just reflect your body, it predicts it. Sometimes it overshoots, sometimes it holds on too long, and still, it works. Somehow, most of the time, your brain manages this wild juggling act, coordinating limbs, monitoring position, interpreting pain signals, and making sure you don't bite your own tongue every time you chew. Which is kind of amazing when you think about it, and a little terrifying when you realize how fragile that balance really is. So next time your foot falls asleep or your arm twitches for no reason, don't panic. Just remember, your brain is improvising, troubleshooting, mapping, and remapping every millisecond, and somewhere inside, a tiny version of you. Librarian, part mechanic, part ghosters, still trying to figure out where the rest of you went. Dreams, déjà vu, and the mental time machine you're walking down a hallway you've never seen before. The wallpaper is peeling, the air smells like oranges and old books, and a soft ticking echoes from somewhere up ahead. You've never been here, and yet you know exactly what's about to happen. You're going to open the next door, and there will be a lamp shaped like a penguin. You open the door, and there it is. exactly as you remembered, but you've never been here before. Dacia, Vutha, eerie glitch in your mental matrix. The sudden sense that this moment, right now, is a rerun of something that never aired. One of the most common yet least understood phenomena of the mind. And the kicker, neuroscientists still argue whether Dacia Vu is a memory malfunction or a timing error in perception. Is it a brain burp or a window into how your mind constructs reality? Here's the mainstream explanation. Dacia Vu likely stems from a short circuit between the memory systems in your brain. One part of your brain flags a moment as familiar before another part finishes processing it. So, you get the spooky sensation of remembering the present. It's like your brain accidentally hits the replay button while you're still recording. And then there are dreams. Dreams. The feverish cinema of sleep. 1/3 of your life is spent in slumber, and for a chunk of that time, your brain is throwing out scripts like a mad playwright, some hilarious, some terrifying, some just weird. You ride flying dogs, show up to school naked, get chased by melting clocks or floating ex-boyfriends. All of it somehow makes sense while it's happening. Why do we dream? Historians and psychologists still argue whether dreams serve an evolutionary function like rehearsing for danger, or are just the byproduct of your brain's nightly housekeeping. Some think dreams help you process emotions, others say they reinforce memory, and still others argue they're just your default mode network entertaining itself while you're offline. The quirky fringe. There's a documented case of a man who, every time he dreamed, visited the same fictional city, same street names, same stores, same people. Over years, his brain built an entire metropolis, completely imaginary, but internally consistent. If that's not an argument for brains being world-building engines, what is? Then there's lucid dreaming, the sweet spot where you realize you're dreaming and can control what happens next. It's like being the director and the lead actor in your own subconscious indie film. Fly. Sure, fight dragons. Why not? Eat 300 tacos without digestive consequences. Go for it. Your brain during REM sleep is lit up like Times Square. The visual cortex, motor areas, even the emotion centers are active. The logic circuits, though, not so much. That's why DreamU thinks it's perfectly reasonable for your grandma to turn into a car and drive you to a rave on the moon. But dreams also reveal something else. The mind isn't just reactive, it's predictive. It simulates, it models, it anticipates. You might be asleep, but your brain is still running scenarios, sorting emotional baggage, and playing what-if games with your identity. That brings us to memory. Your brain doesn't work like a video camera. It's more like a crime witness. Unreliable, suggestible, and prone to rewriting the story when nobody's looking. We used to think memories were stored like files in a cabinet. But now we know that every time you recall something, you change it slightly, like playing a game of telephone with yourself. This is why eyewitness testimony in court is sketchier than it seems. Your memories aren't records, they're reconstructions. You remember the last time you remembered a thing, not the event itself. Weird, right? But even weirder, there are people with highly superior autobiographical memory. Charm, they remember every single day of their lives in vivid detail. Ask them what they had for lunch on June 17th, 1999, and they'll tell you the sandwich, the conversation, even the weather. Sounds like a superpower, right? Except many of them say it's exhausting. Their mental attic is stuffed with clutter they can't throw away. Every embarrassing moment, every fight, every awkward silence, preserved in crystal clarity. Sometimes forgetfulness is a blessing in disguise. Then there's the reverse. People who lose their ability to form new memories, like the famous case of patient HM, who couldn't create new long-term memories after surgery. He'd finish a conversation, then immediately forget he'd had it. Every moment was now. Every greeting was new. The past vanished like a dream upon waking, which brings us to your internal time machine. You think not just in present tense, but in mental time travel. You remember the past and imagine the future. You build timelines, rehearse scenarios, regret mistakes, anticipate outcomes. This makes us uniquely human as far as we know. It also makes us anxious wrecks, because sometimes your brain gets stuck in reverse, or spins too far ahead. One strange phenomenon: false memories. Entire groups of people remember the same non-existent thing, like the famous Mandela effect, where many swear Nelson Mandela died in the 1980s when he didn't, or the spelling of Berenstain Bears versus Berenstain. It's collective gaslighting, courtesy of your brain's laziness. It prefers patterns over accuracy. Close enough is often good enough. So yes, your mind is a time machine, but sometimes it misfiles the photos and draws fake maps, and in dreams, that time machine gets wild. Some report dreaming an entire lifetime, only to wake up in seconds. A guy once claimed he dreamed he lived for decades in an alternate life, only to wake up sobbing for a wife and kids who never existed. Was it real? Well, define real. The emotions were, the grief was. And that's what the mind does best. But it makes things feel true, even when they're utterly invented. So the next time you wake from a dream with your heart pounding, or pause in a hallway because everything feels eerily familiar, panic. You're just experiencing your mind's attempt to tell a story. A very human, very strange, often hilarious story. One that includes flying penguins, time glitches, and penguin-shaped lamps. You'll be fine, probably. Split brains, mirror tests, and the self-illusion you're staring into a mirror. It's early, your hair is playing a prank, your eyes are tired, and you catch yourself wondering, who is that? Who is the you behind the eyes? Not the outfit, or the mood, not the job title or horoscope, but the constant observing you, the thinker of thoughts, the one who quietly says, "That's me." And just like that, your mind starts folding in on itself, like an origami swan trying to remember how it was born. Because here's the truth: you're not as unified as you think you are, not even close. Let's start with the brain itself. You've got two hemispheres left and right connected by a bundle of fibers called the corpus callosum. Normally, they chat all day, sharing info like besties at brunch. But in the mid-20th century, scientists performed split brain surgeries to help severe epilepsy patients. They severed the bridge, and guess what happened? People became two minds in one skull. In these patients, the left hand controlled by the right brain could draw something that the person couldn't verbally name because speech lives in the left brain. One half could see an object and react to it, while the other half remained clueless. One man's right brain was shown a risk image and giggled. But when asked why he laughed, his left brain invented a completely unrelated excuse. Historians and neuroscientists still argue whether split-brain patients are two conscious entities inside one body. And here's the kicker: most of the time, they didn't notice. The illusion of one unified self just kept humming along, like nothing was wrong. So who are you, really? Here's a fringe bit of fun. There are people who, due to neurological conditions, feel like their body parts don't belong to them. One woman insisted her left leg wasn't hers and begged doctors to amputate it. Others have experienced something called alien hand syndrome, where a hand acts on its own, buttoning a shirt that the other hand is unbuttoning. It's like living with a rebellious roommate who's attached to your arm. Then there's the mirror test, a classic in psychology. Put a mark on an animal's face, place them in front of a mirror, and see if they touch the mark or try to wipe it off. That's supposed to show self-awareness. Some great apes pass the test. Dolphins do, elephants, yep, even magpies. But babies, not until they're about 18 months old. Before that, they think their reflection is a fun stranger. And this gets to the root of something eerie. The sense of self is not innate. It's built slowly, piece by piece, as your brain figures out where you end and Nachu begins. Think about how weird that is. You weren't born with a self, you assembled one. Like IKEA furniture, but with more tantrums and existential crises. And even now, that self is unstable. If you've ever had a concussion, lost time from drinking, or simply zoned out so hard you came back 20 minutes later, you've touched that instability. You've seen the cracks. Add meditation to the mix, and things get more unhinged. Seasoned meditators report losing the sense of self entirely, feeling like they're watching thoughts arise and fall without ownership. No me, just awareness. Buddhist traditions have said it for millennia. The self is an illusion, a useful one, sure. Like the desktop on your computer, it hides the messy code underneath. But at its core, there's no little person in your head, pulling levers and filing experiences. That internal voice narrating your life, not the real you. Just another thought. Sorry, and yet, the illusion is powerful. It gets you through the day, helps you choose. Breakfast makes you duck when a ball flies at your face. Your mind needs a central character. But it's more like a story than a substance. Take identity. Are you the same person you were 10 years ago? Same beliefs, same favorite pizza topping? Doubtful. And if every cell in your body has been replaced in the past decade, who exactly is aging? The body's new, the memories are fuzzy. But the story continues. There's a phenomenon in brain injury cases called personality shift. A guy named Phineas Gage had a railroad spike go through his frontal lobe, and boom, his friends said he wasn't him anymore. More impulsive, rude, unpredictable. His soul didn't fly away. Just a chunk of prefrontal cortex got scrambled. Or take Alzheimer's. People slowly lose their memories. Forget loved ones, even forget themselves. Are they still the same person? Philosophers still argue whether identity is a constant or just continuity. It's comforting to think of the mind as a ship sailing steadily across life's ocean. But maybe it's closer to a sandcastle built up, piece by piece, wave by wave, never quite the same. And then there's the placebo effect. Your brain can heal or hurt your body based on belief alone. Take a sugar pill, and if you believe it's medicine, your symptoms might improve. Why? Because your brain releases chemicals in anticipation. Belief becomes biology. It works in reverse too. The nocebo effect. You believe something will harm you, and your body responds accordingly. Nausea, headaches, fatigue, because someone warned you of possible side effects. So if belief can alter pain, mood, and healing, where does the mind end and the body begin? Trick question. They don't. They loop. Your thoughts affect your blood pressure. Your posture affects your confidence. You're not a brain riding a meat vehicle. You're one whole, tangled ecosystem. And yet, somehow, amidst all the split hemispheres, false memories, phantom limbs, and melting sense of self, you still feel like you, a tiny eye watching the chaos, clutching its journal and whispering, "This is fine." And maybe it is, because while your mind might be a house of mirrors, it's your house, a little crooked, maybe, but full of interesting rooms. The dream architect and the sleeping brain you lie down. The room grows quiet. The mattress dips beneath your weight, and somewhere between that first yawn and the flick of your bedside lamp, your brain does something truly strange. It lets go, not entirely, not forever, just enough for the lights to dim in your waking mind and for the backstage crew to take over. Dreams begin. And if you've ever woken up in the middle of a particularly bizarre one, being chased by flamingo accountants, or arguing with a vending machine about taxes you already know, your mind doesn't sleep like the rest of you. It plays welcome to one of the most mysterious zones of mental function, the dreaming brain. This is where logic goes to nap. Memories get tangled like earbuds in a pocket, and every door might lead to your old high school. Except now it's underwater and everyone's a cat. So what is a dream? The standard explanation says that dreams are the brain's way of sorting through the day's junk drawer. You experience thousands of sensations, decisions, emotions, far too many to store cleanly. So while you sleep, your brain replays, mixes, and even rewrites them, trying to make some sense out of nonsense. But here's the kicker. Historians and psychologists still argue whether dreams have any meaning at all. Freud would have said, "You're repressing something, probably about your mother." Jung thought dreams connected you to a universal unconscious, full of shared symbols. Others just think it's neurons firing randomly, and your brain desperately stitching a story to explain them, like a confused narrator stumbling through a PowerPoint it didn't make. Still, dreaming isn't just psychological fluff. People deprived of REM sleep, the deepest dreaming stage, start to unravel fast. Hallucinations, memory issues, emotional outbursts, even waking dreams. The brain needs its nighttime soap opera. Here's a quirky twist. You actually dream every night, multiple times. You just don't remember most of them. Those you do recall, usually dreams you woke up during. So that one where you're late for an exam in a language you've never learnt, while wearing a tutu, that's just one scene in a 6-act circus. You slept through, and don't get to smug your body gets tricked too. During REM sleep, your brain literally paralyzes your muscles, so you don't act out your dreams. It's called REM atonia. You're locked in, twitching only at the fingertips or eyes. Sometimes, though, that lock malfunctions. Ever had sleep paralysis? That half-awake, half-frozen feeling where you can't move, can't scream, and often feel like something is sitting on your chest. It's terrifying. People across cultures have given it names. The old hag, a demon, the night witch. In truth, it's your mind waking up before your body does. And it's just as unpleasant as it sounds. Your bedroom warps. Shadows stretch, and the part of your brain that governs fear gets the volume turned up to 11. If you're lucky, it only lasts a few seconds. If not, well, enjoy your tour of the Nightmare Museum. Now, let's talk about lucid dreams, the rebellious younger cousin of regular dreams. In a lucid dream, you know you're dreaming. You might even control it. Fly, breathe underwater, talk to a historical figure. Some people train themselves to recognize dream signs like clocks that never tell the same time twice, or light switches that don't work and use them to wake up inside the dream. The real kicker: your brain's frontal lobe, the part responsible for logic and self-awareness, lights up during lucidity. It's like a brief truce between waking and sleeping minds. But again, science isn't fully sure why. Some neurologists still debate whether lucid dreams are a separate state of consciousness altogether. Are you awake inside sleep, or just dreaming that you're awake? Either way, the implications are wild. Some therapists use lucid dreaming to treat recurring nightmares. Artists use it for inspiration. Athletes rehearse moves in dreams and improve real-world performance. Your brain doesn't always know the difference between imagining and doing. And that brings us to the Matrix moment. If your mind can generate worlds in dreams, places with texture, time, characters, conflict, how do you really know you're awake now? Maybe don't think too hard about that right before bed. Still, dreaming has evolutionary roots. Animals dream too. Dogs twitch. Cats murmur. Rats running mazes by day show similar brain patterns during REM, as if replaying routes in their sleep. The mind, even in rest, doesn't rest. And that opens another question. Does the dreaming mind ever tell you truths your waking mind avoids? Writers have solved problems in dreams. Musicians hear melodies. Even the structure of the benzene molecule came to a scientist in a dream. He saw a snake biting its own tail. That's either a chemical breakthrough or a trip to Jung's personal theme park. Your mind, it seems, is a storyteller, whether or not you're conscious of it. It stitches past and present into dream logic, uses symbols instead of words, and turns anxiety into architecture. All while you're drooling on a pillow. And yet, most dreams are forgotten within minutes of waking. That whole inner cinema lost. But perhaps that's part of the mind's genius. It gives you just enough to make you wonder. So tomorrow morning, as you sip coffee and try to recall why your cousin was also a goat and speaking fluent Italian, remember, the mind isn't just a thing you have. It's a place you visit, a shifting theater with no fixed script, where you play every role, and just like that, it all blends: the sleeping and the waking, the thought and the dream, the watcher and the watched. Because your mind, it's always dreaming. You've traveled far tonight through neurons and nonsense, through centuries of wrong ideas and right guesses, and deep into the quietly flickering corridors of the human mind. Now, as you lie still, the weight of your body begins to dissolve into the mattress, and the thoughts swirl slower, softer, gentler. The brain, the strange, wrinkled galaxy inside your skull, no longer demands explanations. It isn't trying to solve anything right now. It just lets the colors fade into one another, the shapes blur, the facts melt into feelings. You breathe in, quiet. You breathe out, quieter still. Whatever questions the day brought with it, about who you are, how your mind works, whether free will is real, or if you're just the narrator of a story already written, those can wait. They'll be there in the morning, folded neatly like a note on your nightstand. But for now, you are not a philosopher, not a skeptic, not even a thinker. You're just still, and in this stillness, your brain knows exactly what to do. It will take your memories and emotions, your secrets and snapshots, and it will swirl them gently into dream stuff, nonsense with meaning. Meaning that doesn't need to make sense.